Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a journal, a junk journal for myself, and I'm using an old book cover. It's hardback. I'd done some fussy cutting. What is it? 17 by about 11 centimeters, and the spine is 2.5. So I think I'll do 2 signatures with secretary and my business and subscription boxes. I very often the orders and things that I get are for a vintage, romantic, feminine style, but I personally actually like very bright colors and intense colors and putting reds and pinks and teals together, and it's not something that I explore that much professionally or commercially, so I'm going to try and do it today. So I've started pulling some things from my junk box because I do like that. So you'll see there's a whole lot of gel press pulls and wipe off where stencils had. It's a bit of a Frida Kahlo ghost. Much brighter brochures, offcuts, really just odds and ends and things that I like but that I don't use. So much brighter. And then I've pulled some scrapbooking papers. There is some coffee dyes and things, some gold. These are all got from a friend. There's some vellums and things, but they're all long strips. So yeah, much more color. This one my little girl drew on with a highlighter, but I'm just going to use it. This is a Lou Harvey Mr. Price collab, so that's a serviette, and there's notebooks that go with it. So I may actually, because the notebooks are plain, I may actually use the notebook in the junk journal. So as you can see, bright. We're going bright. I've spoken before about themes and choosing colors and things, and while it's bright, the colors are all repeating. There's definitely, as always for me, there's florals, there's botanics, there's birds, butterflies, bugs, those sort of natural thing. That's all coming through. Very little text, so it's not that I'm literally adding anything that's bright. I'm still being considered. It's just a different colorway. A binding method that I've shown before. So this is the inside of the book that I've gutted. So the signatures will be sewn in there, but then you would see on the spine. So what I have shown before is that you sew into a fabric, and you then attach the fabric on the inside of the journal. So then your sewing is hidden because you're gluing that down. And because when repurposing a book, when you've got fabric, you can get it into all of those lines that are naturally there because of the book cover. So that is the method. I've got this piece of offcut. It's like a Suzanne print. So I think that'll work very well. I may just position it to get like this mandala in the middle. And then if you're a beginner, it's quite easy to sew your spine into something like this because it's flexible and you can really get up close to see an opening and closing rather than a book. And if you make a mistake, it's not as visible because you're hiding it in the book cover. The next thing is this book is covered with like a plasticky thing that's bubbling, which isn't so great. I like the birds though, so there'll be some work to fix that. First step will just be to make sense out of all of these, and I'll follow the method that the signature gets a scrapbook cover, an outside layer. I'm not sure what I'll use the junk journal for yet, so I'm not paying too much attention to whether you can write on the page or not, but I'm a big person that just stick something new over the page or add a tag or staple something on the base page if it no longer suits your purpose. It's not the end of the world. You don't need to have the answers to everything when you are setting up a journal. I'm going to cut down my papers to size now. This is 17.5, so I'm going to go for 16 because I often add overhangs and things. I don't want the page to be too long, so a bit of a gap. And then this is 10, so it would be 20 to fold. So, and I very often forget, so I just make a little note and then I know to start cutting and folding. When I've cut my first item, in this case it was an exhibition, and it's a nice thick card, I just bring it back to the journal and just put it in to see that my measurements and my ideas, and can you see it's quite short, but because it then gives you a space for tabs and things. So it's really personal preference whether you like your page to sit all the way at the edge or whether you prefer to give yourself some room. I often add lace edging and things, and I don't want it sticking out too much because the closure will probably just be an elastic or something, and then it catches if it sticks over. Also, when you're folding papers, take care. Like this was a gel print, but this is also a gel print, so I don't necessarily want both the gel prints on the outside. So take care to vary your things, but something like that, the two gel prints together actually look quite nice. And when I'm saying these things are junk journals, this is a flower bag, but the craft on flower bags are really nice. So I used it. As I'm going through the things that I pulled, I find this is it's a sticker sheet. So it won't, see it pulls off. That won't be a good page, but it may make a good pocket. For example, on here it would need to be cut, but that'll be later in the journal. So I'm just putting like possible embellishments and ephemera pieces to the side. These are the large 30 by 30 scrapbook sheets that I had pulled as possible signature covers. This one's got some foiling and it's blank at the back. That's red. I think this one, these are a bit boring, and especially this one by the time you cut it, but these may make good journaling cards. I think that can go. It's like an orange with a yellow. What I do like about this one, it's my mind's eye paper. It's textured and it's very heavy. And then these I love because they're nuts. It's Do Crafts. I think the one's a wild print. I love animal print. And this one's a hot tropics. So I may go for these. I must just check. I don't think I've got too much pink in the journal. So, and this is not it's not an intense, it's not a shocking pink. It's not like this, because these go with red. These purpley pinks don't do well with red. So, but I like teal and pink, so favorite. So I'll hold off on the covers until I know what the inside looks like. When I do signatures, I don't often do more than 8 or 10 pages. Because I tend to add a lot and then they get very thick. So, and I also get bored. So when it's a, is this thing not focusing? When it's a very thick big journal, I end up not finishing it because I get bored with how it looks. I've got a selection of 15 by 15 sheets. I think this is also Paper Mania. They're going to be much smaller, but I like that they're white at the back so you can write, and the colors are good. So I will put them in. What I do want to check is I always try and add a different shape in the journal. I think I might actually just put them in as triangles and chop off the tops. So they end up looking like that, which I think is actually quite a bit of fun. I didn't even do it that the angles on the top and the bottom are the same. Just know with me, I'm not about straight lines. I'm not about being pedantic. I'm not about everything matching. So if this is not your style, don't berate yourself, find your style. And it took me a long time to find my style, and now you can revel in it. And then again, I'm just mixing up the way that I'm folding them, so that when you page, even though that may be blank, that you get a pop of color on the other side. So pay attention to that when you start making your signature pages. I'm adding, this is a velvet offcut. It's a beautiful, like a cherry red color. It's not too bad. I like bling. I often find mismatched jewelry pieces and things that I just like looking at. So you can pin it on there. You can pin anything on here. You can pin a dangle that you've made that's pretty. And also, like, just touching it. So it may not at first glance have the purpose that a paper has in a journal, but I still like it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a greeting card from the city of Johannesburg. It's all bling. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So almost there. I'm going to look what else I've got lying around here as offcuts. This is slightly more vintage than what the journal calls for. It's got the foiling on that I did on my brother, and I absolutely love the effect. So I'm definitely going to include that, because this was just the technique I tested. So that's 16. I think that'll do, because it's 17, 18 with the actual scrapbooking covers. In layering up how things are going to look in your journal, I'm now just seeing what sits next to each other, because the third page doesn't need to necessarily match the 8th page in the second signature, because you never see them together. They need to talk to each other, but they don't need to match. But the things that sit next to each other need to match. And you also need to introduce your diary, or introduce your journal, if I can say that, with your first pages. So that now brings us back to this. Like, these patterns do really well with each other. Actually, they're a perfect echo of each other, so that's actually good. Like, that's not good. That's fine. Neither of these are good. The colors aren't good. So as much as I like them, I don't think they'll work. I think I'm going to go for the shiny one. I must just cut it so that I get the most of the bling. The wrapping around the signature cover can be slightly bigger, so that it covers your signatures. So these are all 10 or smaller. So I mean, this can be 10.5 or 11. Then you end up on 22, and I think you've still got enough space. Yeah, probably maybe 10.5. I cut it slightly bigger than I thought, so that I can come and see how it sits, and that's right at the edge. I think maybe just trim off a mil will be good. And then this sits in the middle, and that gives enough clearance. I'm happy with that, even if it sticks out a bit. So this is 17, so just under 17 will be better. So rather, when you cut things, cut them too big. If you're not quite sure how you want to do it, you can always... It is nice to have a striking middle page. I didn't actually consider that. I've still got this offcut peacocks. I think that'll work fine. I'm just going to... Then that you see the whole thing as your middle page. But, I mean, that would have been fine as a middle page too. It's just use the opportunity on your middle signature page for something with a big image, because you see the whole image. I've put these together just roughly to see how they go. Remember, they've got no embellishments. So this is plain, plain, plain. But I mean, that can be adjusted. But I'm happy with the colors, and then that's the center. And then don't forget to page back to you see, I'm happy with that, so that'll be signature 1. I'm just going to paper clip it. I didn't use any vellum, which I generally do. Maybe I must check around for that. The second signature will now sit next to this first one, so you can either, I mean, that matches. You can go slightly brighter, and then you end in with this fabric again. I think it's match of a matchness, but I think these two together are a bit... They're a bit boring, but they're definitely more cohesive, and I can always embellish the front cover. So let me put this on the outside so that these two are next to each other. Sunday here, so you'll definitely hear my kids carrying on like hooligans. Also, I just lost the light, so I'm not sure. There we go. When you're doing journal covers or signature covers, try and make them the same to compensate for your irregular sizes in the actual signature. It makes binding a lot easier. Also, just look at this. This is 2 signatures of like, I think 9, maybe 10. So that's really at the max. And they're fat already. So don't think that you need so many pages to make up a signature. It adds bulk very quickly, and that's before embellishments and ephemera and pockets and all the things. So this will sit like this. I'm now just going to mark on the wrong side what is actually the spine. You should probably use a pencil if you can find one, and just mark the whole band, and then from there you can make your marks if you follow this method of binding. So I've marked out, none of it shines through on the other side, ignore that line, so it's going to be 3-hole pamphlet stitch. So there's 1 signature, 2 signatures, that's the middle. Now, make sure that you stitch your signatures to the facing side of the fabric, but you will be able to see your marks throughout, and you will be able to flip over very easily. So that's why I like this style. Okay, so now all needle, thread, sew. If you have any papers that you want to reinforce the spines and things, obviously now would be the good time. My only one really is the grid paper, because it came out of book, so it's got this original stitching lines, but it's not fragile, so I don't need to washi or reinforce with decoupage. And then when you start sewing, check that you're sewing right way up. I don't have many patterns, so for me I couldn't really go upside down, and that you're sewing into your correct channel, that you don't do some of your stitches in signature 1's holes and some of your stitches in signature 2 holes. Ask me how I know. I know for a lot of you sewing is daunting, but with this method of sewing into the lining fabric, do you see you can page through, because you can lift, which you wouldn't have been able to do with the hardback. So you can pick through your holes, and then that's the last one, and you can see what you are doing. Don't let your inside thread go missing, and my kids are now right outside the window, and keep it nice and tight, and you can see your stitches are straight, because when you get your pieces that are much shorter, like this music paper, it'll catch the 2 holes right on the edge. The best is then just to position it to a top or the bottom, so that you decide to catch a better hole if you can. But before I put in my signatures, I need to have a think about my cover, because once the signatures are in, it becomes more difficult to work on the cover. So knowing what's in the journal now, the spine's discolored, the spine's kind of ugly. I've tried to pull this plastic off, but whoops, you can't really. So I'm going to add some fabrics and see. I don't think I can actually keep the bird, so I'm going to do a fabric. I don't want to cover the whole thing either, but I've got this doily that's nuts. You know I like using doilies. And I got this in a swap recently from, I think she's Flora, not Flora. But now I'm not even sure if even I can pull these colours off. But I mean, that gives you a really nice idea of what's going to be in the journal, because then the next page you hit is this. I kind of like it. I've done the cover. I know this is definitely not everyone's taste. This was remnant, it's neon, but I love it. I'll add a Tim Holtz words. You know I like them. I just want to ink it so that it's not so white, and I find them too bulky, so I always just peel them back a little bit, so that'll be finishing touch. And I need to punch a hole for my dangle, but I want to, while I have time, just have a look at the inside. So now again, make sure everything is right way up, and then we can glue. As I said, I start with my glue gun on the spine, because that's hidden. So if you have seepage or anything shows through, it's not the end of the world. So a fair glob of glue, and then it's just now to make your spine. Remember, you drew the lines of where it should be, so that should match up. Did I do it right way up? Yeah. And then just press into there so that you are sure it sits. And then if you wanted this, for example, as a pocket or something, you could do that, because it's quite neat. Normally the book page is inside. You could line it again and then just glue on the sides, and then you've still got a pocket. That's maybe not a bad idea. Actually, there's my answer. Does this fit in here? Be a squash and a squeeze. Yeah, that would have been a good solution. To have a pocket for a notebook. There we go. I added a whole lot of tassels. I think it's looking a bit bohemian, which wasn't necessarily my intention when I started, but it is what I like. This is a little kokeshi with a bell in, a charm. I love kokeshis. I collect them. Not the most obvious journal to put it on, but it gives me such joy just to look at it. And then it's a whole big tassel with tassels, and this can add more. There's some pom-poms on the spine. So the inside is still plain. I'm just going to do a page through on the pages. So lots of colour, but I've added no embellishments. I'll still get to that as I use it. It's a bit of movement, but you'll always get that on the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. 5-hole keeps it nice and tight. This is, but something like this you can just glue, and then you've got a tuck spot and a tuck spot. So there's lots of room to play here. This one's a bit skew now that I look at it, but again, not the end of the world. There's velvet. So I'm happy I got to use up a whole lot of scraps. I like how it looks. It really is indicative of my tastes and my personality and my idea of what a junk journal should be. once I start using it and adding some embellishments and things, I'll definitely do a follow-up video. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for the comments and the likes. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and if there's anything you specifically want to see a video of, let me know. Bye-bye.